to Flop Culture, a podcast where I speak to an esteemed guest about a flop they find interesting, confounding, and that's potentially not a flop at all. I'm your host, Fionnuala. I hope you're well. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode on Scream Queens with Key McCarthy. He will be back on Patreon this month to discuss the Celebration tour, the Madonna tour. We went together and we were supposed to record in the airport, but I was so tired that I actually did not speak to him. So sorry about that, Cian, but you will get it soon, I promise. If you want to join us over there, it's patreon.com/flopculture. And of course, if you want to keep up with us on social media, it's at flopculture_pod. Keep your ratings coming in. I love to see them. Ratings and reviewings. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. 5 stars preferable. If you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and leave your nickname, I will recommend a bop or flop to you at the end of next week's episode. We've got a big episode coming up, a big franchise to dig into with a beloved guest. But before we get into any of that, I think there's some news to cover. Jacob Elordi, star of the upcoming Sofia Coppola Elvis biopic, kind of technically Priscilla biopic, but anyway, he's playing Elvis in that biopic, says he only knew about Elvis from Lilo and Stitch before starring in Priscilla. A perfect sentence? A perfect headline? Yes, 100%. The most I knew of Elvis Presley was in Lilo and Stitch. He confessed to Jimmy Fallon on Monday's episode of The Tonight Show, which is a lot. It is, because Lilo's, if anyone's unfamiliar with the plot of Lilo and Stitch, an alien... Am I familiar with the plot of Lilo and Stitch? It's been a while since I watched it. A spaceship... Oh no, these people from space come to get this experiment that they've made in space, 626, who ends up being Stitch, and they have to come back and rescue him. But in the meantime, Lilo has found this experiment, 626, and adopted him, and it kind of has become her friend/dog. But Lilo is not like other girls, hashtag not like other girls, and she's really into Elvis. Constantly playing his records, ends up dressing Stitch up as Elvis, you know, stuff like that. Very endearing. So obviously all these headlines come out, and the headlines come out with, you know, your collage picture of Jacob Elordi next to an image of Stitch dressed up as Elvis. So I'm seeing these, and again, I'm seeing the images before I'm reading, before I'm engaging my brain, and I'm going, oh, he's been cast in the live action. This 6'5" man is going to play a presumably 2-foot dog alien in the live action. Perfect. He's going to go method. He's going to paint himself blue. He's going to learn alien language. There's a man that's committed to his craft. I am absolutely obsessed with this. And if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be annoyed. Especially, I wasn't the only one that thought this. So I need whoever is involved in the Lilo and Stitch live action to stop what they're doing with the CGI and the computers and pressing the mouse and clicking the buttons, right? We don't need to do that. We actually don't need technology. This is one of the few instances where, you know what, let's go back to the old days and let's let people act, you know what I mean? I want to see Jacob Elordi go method. I want him to go like Austin Butler lengths, the way that Austin Butler did for the Baz Luhrmann Elvis. But instead, Jacob Elordi is going method to play Stitch, and he's trying to do the voice, and then he is doing every interview in the Stitch voice, which I'm not even sure I can do. I was trying to practice before I started recording. Oh, no, terrible. Adam's probably going to keep that in. I used to be so good at it. Oh, no. Okay, I'm just going to stop. Anyway, you can Google it if you can't remember what Stitch sounds like. But yeah, I can't wait. Please, Lilo and Stitch live action people, listen to me. This is what the people want. And by the people, I mean me. Okay, from one freaky horror show to another, it's our final Halloween horror spooky themed flop. And we're in The Blair Witch Project burst onto the scene in 1999, redefining the horror genre with its groundbreaking found footage style. It was an overnight sensation, a pioneer of viral marketing, and a true game changer in the world of cinema. The franchise quickly spiraled, however, into a tangled web of questionable sequels, diminishing returns, and a muddled mythology. How did this innovative and terrifying concept lose its way so spectacularly? Joining me to discuss the Blair Witch franchise, including its ill-fated sequels, is writer, host of No Encore, and audio researcher at the Irish Independent, Dave Hanratty. Dave Hanratty, you're back. Season's greetings to you, my friend. Happy, it's not Halloween yet, but it is October. So happy spooky season to you and yours.
And to you, yeah. I'm scared already. I was saying to you that
I'm petrified.
there appears to be a pentagram on the door.
Stop now. I don't know who put that
It's
there.
right to your right.
I'm filing a complaint with Adam, who owns this building and has been very quiet about the whole thing.
I want to stay on theme.
Okay.
On theme
Yeah.
with the decor today.
Can you ensure that's gone the next time I'm back for...
Yeah, please. We're never making it out of this room. How are you? Thanks for coming back again.
Yeah, I'm good. I got a tooth removed recently and I'm worried that I sound different. I'd certainly feel different, but I think it's in keeping with the overall horrible Halloween theme that we're going. I'm good. How's life? How are you?
Life is good. I couldn't have thought of a better person for this spooky season of flops that we're doing. Tell us about what we are going to be talking about today.
First of all, honoured to be back. Thanks very much. And honoured to talk about this subject. We're going to talk about the Blair Witch franchise. I know you said the Blair Witch Project. That's the first one, of course, in this kind of weird, I'd say unassailable and messy franchise of media. But the original back in 1999 was, it's the benchmark, I think, in many respects for a lot of horror, certainly independent horror filmmaking, and the impact it had on pop culture is gigantic, and we will talk about that. But of course, this is flop culture, and so we got to pick a bad thing or a thing that did not work. And so the sequels, they've tried to make sequels to this movie. And boy, oh boy, did they break my horror heart when they came along at different times.
I had no idea that there were two sequels and one as contemporary as the 2016 one, which we'll obviously talk about in a bit more depth later on. So to learn that, I was like, I feel like this came and went without a moment's whisper. People were over this. People were like, no more sequels, no more reboots, please. Let's stick with what we know.
Yeah, arguably the third worst thing to happen in 2016 after the election of Donald Trump to the US presidency and Brexit being finalised.
I was going to ask what the second thing was.
Yeah,
a lot of celebrities died as well. That wasn't
yeah, that was the year when everyone, Alan Rickman, Leonard Cohen, Prince, Bowie, and various others. Yeah, and everyone was like, it's some kind of curse. And I'm like, no, there's just more famous people now than there were in years gone by, and it's a weird series of coincidences. Maybe the Blair Witch did it. I don't know.
Maybe the Blair Witch did it. I don't know.
Came calling for David Bowie's musical prowess.
When did the Blair Witch come calling for you first? What's your earliest memory of this franchise?
Beautiful question. What a link.
That was stunning. Sorry now to shag my own hole. That was because I'm usually so bad at them. That was great.
She's a star, everybody. I'm glad you asked because as previously discussed on the Colin Farrell episode, I am that little bit older than you are. Mm-hmm. And again, to reiterate, I don't mean that in any kind of head-patting way. I envy your youth. It's more that, when the Blair Witch came calling was when the film came calling.
I was 4 when the first Blair Witch came out, so I did not watch it upon its release, needless to say.
I was 15. And so 1999, everybody, what a year for pop culture. It remains undefeated if you ask me. Just the greatest in music and movies and TV and all that kind of stuff, and it was a more innocent time. I remember first hearing about this movie. My brother, who is 8 years older than me, and that'll be important to the story later on, he went to Australia like 2 years, I think, prior to that on his first ever big out-of-house trip, and then he went to America for a 6-month holiday. I think it was San Francisco, but I could be wrong. And while he was there, he'd ring home on occasion and he would tell us about the movies he was seeing, because of course it was that time period when you didn't have universal releases. Like, you'd have to wait sometimes a full year or 6 months. Something comes out in America, you see it on, the film show on BBC One or Channel 4 or something, and then you're like, you read about it in Empire magazine and you're like, I want to see it now, but we have to wait 6 fucking months. So my brother was telling me about this movie, The Blair Witch Project, when he saw it, because at the time, of course, this thing came out of nowhere. It's definitely like, an example of marketing and the at the time, the World Wide Web, as it was known, being used to an unbelievable degree. But for a lot of people, it just was this independent thing that just happened along with a ton of hype. And my brother got to see it before it even came out here. As a matter of fact, by the time he got back to Ireland, it was only coming out then. So we went to see it again. But I was hooked on the idea of this thing, and I remember reading, of all things, Heat magazine. Is that still going?
Classic literature, yeah. It sure is.
But Heat magazine, for anyone who doesn't know, when Heat magazine first emerged in the late 90s, it wasn't just, Dua Lipa's got some cellulite, she's just like us, she's a mess. It wasn't always like that. It actually initially conceived itself as a entertainment magazine. And it was trying to be serious about it. It was trying to be a little bit of a, edge, I suppose. But it had, I remember it had a 4-page spread or something on the Blair Witch Project, including still images from the movie. And again, like I say, the internet was a thing, but it wasn't the way it is today. You couldn't just go onto YouTube and dial up a trailer. If you wanted to see a trailer for this movie, there was a website, but depending on your, dial-up internet connection, you could be waiting 3 hours to see this 60-second trailer. So it was physical media was tied into it, and there was all this buzz building. And yeah, I mean, like when I finally got to see it was appropriately enough around kind of Halloween-ish time when it hit the cinemas. Shall I tell that story?
Absolutely, please do.
So the Blair Witch Project, for anyone who somehow doesn't know, and I think you were new to it.
I had never watched it before this, but obviously hugely familiar. I've seen all the references, parodies to a degree. Watched it for the first time for this. Found it quite scary, which a lot of people said I wouldn't when I told them I was doing this, because obviously I knew the references. Found footage, is that such a thing now? But I genuinely, the end of it is so unnerving, but it's so simple.
It is, yeah. Adam, can we have the trailer, please, for the original Blair Witch Project from 1999?
This is my home, which I am leaving the comforts of for the weekend to explore the Blair Witch. I can see you.
I'm real excited about this. Thank you for the
I'm very
opportunity.
glad.
This area's been haunted by that old woman for years.
I don't know why you have to have every conversation on video.
Because we're making a documentary.
Not about us getting lost. We're making a documentary about a witch.
I
We're
don't.
lost. Admit that first.
No, I know we're not lost.
They're all over the place.
But how do we know it was people?
Well, even if it wasn't, I'm not going to play with that either.
And it's all because of me that we're here now. Hungry and cold and hunted. Just want to apologize to Mike's mom and Josh's mom and my mom.
Tell me where you are, Josh!
So yeah, it is about what was purported, was sold as this like found footage thing. And found footage, like it didn't give birth to the genre of found footage, but it certainly brought it back and made it mainstream and popularized it. You have to go, God, all the way back to like the 70s, I think. I mean, like Cannibal Holocaust is kind of regarded as the first big one, but there was one before that as well. But it wasn't a genre, and like it's as it sounds. If anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, it's about this like paranormal activity and kind of like the VHS movies of recent years are kind of done in that style where it's like footage was found and we've stitched it together and it's all handheld camera and looks terrible and but there's a real quote unquote thing underneath the surface that lends it a certain level of, fuck, did this really happen? To some audiences, maybe. And there were a lot of audiences who thought that this film, The Blair Witch Project, was in fact real. The marketing campaign, apart from, there was a website basically you could go to which had, like a documentary on it. Like they made a mock documentary, a mockumentary, if you will, and which basically was like, the legend of, this local serial killer, the legend of this local witch. And some of the people at like film festivals when the film was going to screen would be handing out missing posters of the three leads in this movie, Heather Donahue, Joshua Leonard, and Michael, God, what is his name? It'll come to me. I'm sorry to the third member of the Blair Witch, who's the least, Williams, I think. But like basically like people on the street were like, what, like, oh, this is a real thing, like this is how it's sold to us. It is Michael Williams, and it's not the case, of course, and like the actors were on talk shows and there was interviews with the directors who put this together, and if you looked even a little bit hard, you would see that this was clearly just a very well masked thing. But of course there were people out there who thought it was completely real and that they were watching a snuff film essentially. So to bring it back to my own experience of this, I recall going to see this in Drogheda, where I'm from, and
Shout out Drogheda. Shout out the floppy disks in Drogheda.
Sure, shout out a town that I have outgrown. And basically it was like fucking, went to the local cinema. I think it was like Screen 4 in the Boyne Omniplex, so not exactly the greatest of, places to see it, but it's not a great looking movie. So it was me, my very eager brother, who of course had seen it in America, and I remember him saying that when he saw it in the States, he left the cinema, and the very first thing that he saw across the street at night was woods. And he was just like, no, thank you. He also had a run-in, I think, with his like landlady about a week later, and she said that she saw the movie, and he was kind of like, oh, cool, I have something to talk to her about. What'd you think of it? And she was like, oh, it was great. Yeah, I thought it was awesome. But, me and my husband are going to go out there next year and find out what really happened. Because people were doing that. People were actually like, going to the woods and ruining the experience for people who actually live there to find these missing kids. God. Myself and my brother, I was 15, he was 23, and my sister came as well. She was 25. We went to see the Blair Witch Project on a Sunday evening at around 6 or 7 p.m, I think. And it's not a very long movie. It's about 90 minutes, I think. And
A good hour 20 or hour 25. Perfect.
Yeah, it's
Perfection.
the greatest of run times
Yeah.
ever. We went to see it in the cinema, and like it's going on, and I think it's interesting because like you said, the people said to you that you're not going to find it scary.
A few people did. I remember when I said to them, they were like, it's going to be lost on you now because,
So
as
much
I
time
said,
has passed, yeah.
Yeah, already knew it. Found footage is such a thing that, like, my Blair Witch was probably Paranormal Activity. You know what I mean? That's my equivalent. But still, fuck me, like, it's just...
Yeah, my Blair Witch was Ellie Kedward, baby. Though I'm glad that you feel that way, and I'm very much looking forward to you giving me the detail of you approaching it in 2023. But even then, there were people who were like, nothing happens. Like, it's just boring. Nothing happens. You don't see anything. And
I was kind of initially struggling,
Yeah.
but I knew the payoff would be
Payoff's amazing.
good. And it's when you kind of think back on it, it's breadcrumbed slightly in some things, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, I was kind of getting a bit antsy, and then obviously things start happening, and you're like, surely this isn't going to be as scary as you think it is. And then it just is. Like, they nailed the landing, like.
Completely, yeah, to this day. And so we went to see it in the cinema, and I could tell that there were people in the audience who were finding it boring, and were like, where are the jump scares? Where are the traditional, conventional means of horror? Like, this is just badly shot footage of people walking around woods. Like, nothing's really occurring. But I was really enraptured by it. My brother was very happy because he'd seen it already, and he was, enjoying seeing it again. But my sister was really struggling, and there was a couple of times, like in the first little half of it, where she was kind of turning to my brother and being like, "I'm really not. I really don't like this.
I'm not vibing with this."
Yeah, like I think I don't know if I can kind of see it through.
In the sense she was bored, or
I think it was uncomfortable.
Okay.
Just found it uncomfortable for whatever reason. And then at one point towards the end, and my brother was trying to be like, no, he's like trust me, like it's worth seeing it through. And then of course towards the end of the movie, spoilers for this movie, they find a house, and I remember this vividly. At that exact moment when they found the house, that's when my sister turned to my brother and said, "I have to leave. I can't. I really I can't." And he was like, "It's almost over. It's almost over." The cruelest thing of all time. He kept her in the cinema. And so the ending happens, and it's the most terrifying ending ever. And we walked home, and my sister, 25 years of age, was crying hysterically on the walk home. I, however, a cool young lad of 15, was like, "It didn't scare me, mate. I'm tough as nails." And I was fine. I was like, I thought that was really interesting and good, and I think I liked it quite a bit. And I went home. I was playing like my computer, whatever. The night rolled on. Eventually, my brother and I shared a room, and eventually my brother like knocks on the door at like say 11:30 or something, and I'm completely fine. I'm listening to like the FM 104 phone show, and I'm playing like a Championship Manager or something, and life is good. And my brother's like, I'm going to bed now, and I was like, all right. And then he was like, "You don't want to be the last one up though, do you?" And I went, and then I was like. I basically was like he was inside like watching like fucking Caligula or something, and I was like, yeah, no, and so like I immediately raced upstairs, and the two of us, we'd bunk beds or whatever, so I realized that's when it kicked in. That's when I was like, no, hang on, I'm actually completely affected by this, and I didn't realize. And so my brother and I are sitting there, or like watching this movie at like fucking 1 a.m. or something at this point. And I remember this again, it was on television screen. It was a really bad movie from the 90s called Wolf, starring Jack Nicholson and James Spader, about werewolves. And we're watching this movie, and I'm trying to just kind of calm myself down. And our bedroom door just swings open.
No.
Bedroom door swings open, and all I can see is a silhouette
No, Dave.
of a woman.
You don't, Dave.
This is true. Silhouette of a woman, and I'm like freaked out, Bart Simpson style. It's my sister. She's crying. She can't handle it, and she says to my brother, "You need to stay in the same room as me." And he was like, "Come on, I'm not moving." And she's like, "I'm serious. I can't sleep. I'm too freaked out." And so he was like, "Fine." And I went, "No, absolutely not. He's not going." And so my sister, my brother, and I slept in the same room. I slept on the floor. And I got about 1 hour of sleep.
Just so you wouldn't be by yourselves.
100%. I was petrified. And I remember when morning broke, I only then felt a sense of relief. And why? Because the film completely fucks you over at the end of that movie. People were mad because they were like, "You don't see the witch. There's nothing."
That's good. It's sometimes one of the failings of horror and like scary movies, you see too much and then it's not scary. The whole point of that is you don't see what the thing looks like. It's
100%.
Your imagination is way scarier than any movie or writer could come up with.
Exactly. And which, again, also helps this film out from a budgetary perspective, if you want to get into that, because this thing cost, what was it like? I mean, 30 between $35,000 and $60,000 to shoot, but it had a final cost of between $200,000 and $750,000 after post-production edits. It made almost $250 million worldwide. Unheard of, you know, all the stuff around it. And I remember Sky One aired one of the documentaries, like the fake documentaries. There was so much lore built into this thing straight away. And again, you know, as you're saying there, it's always scarier what the brain can conjure up and make you think what you've seen. For example, like I rewatched Seven recently, the amazing, you know, David Fincher
Never
movie.
seen it.
You've never seen Seven?
No.
Well, just for your sake and for anyone who hasn't seen it, I won't spoil something, but there is something very big that happens at the end of that movie. It's amazing, by the way. And my brain made me think that I saw something that actually isn't in the movie. When people went to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the 1970s, which is, again, for me is like a 5-star perfect horror up there with Blair Witch, no problem. You think you see more violence than you have. Like there's just a trick in it that makes your brain say, I saw someone get like absolutely torn limb from limb with a chainsaw. You didn't. It's not in the movie. There is violence, but it's not like that. It's very matter of fact. And that's the weight of a horror film that actually matters. Like for example, you go see like any horror in the I saw the new Saw movie the other day. It's fine. It's grand. It's actually better than your average Saw movie. But it's still people like, you know, cutting their flesh apart and you're like, yeah, well, you know, it's just gore, isn't it, for the sake of it. There's no real weight to it, really. Blair Witch Project shows you none of that and has been haunting my brain since 1999. So can I have your experience, please, of seeing this movie in 2023?
I just, they could never do it in the modern age, as we'll learn when we talk about the fucking terrible sequels / reboots. I mean,
spoilers for your opinion on these.
Yeah, well, like, we'll get into it, but I just think, you know, you've got the low budget, low res video footage, so you're not even really sure what you're seeing. You're like trying to examine the background and the foreground to see if you miss things, and you're not, but it's just like your brain playing tricks on you, as you said. You know, the effect of the static, stuff like that. I was very afraid. I watched it last night because I wanted to be kind of fresh in my head before we recorded, and I watched it with my fiance, who's not into horror at all, but like will kind of willingly watch these things with me because he's like interested, but he doesn't really like it. And we were both like, that was freaky as shit. Like it wasn't lost on me. Like I'm sure it probably is for some people, don't get me wrong, but I love that feeling of tension and feeling unnerved. And it does this, and it's no surprise that it went on to influence so many others. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for better and for worse.
Yeah,
and like,
for sure.
And also not to be all like, you know, not to be like old man Dave here, but like it coming out at a time when there wasn't smartphones, that adds to it because you're just like...
No, but that's what I'm saying. You even see... Did you see a movie called Spree?
Yeah, no, I haven't. That's your man from Stranger Things,
Yeah,
isn't it?
not really a horror, but like
Comedy,
slasher,
horror,
but
yeah.
it kind of all takes place... It's someone going live. He's going live and he's murdering people,
His
essentially. He's like an
passengers
Uber
or something.
driver.
Yeah,
It's a terrible fucking movie anyway, to be completely honest. I remember I saw it kind of during the pandemic and I was like, this is brilliant, because I wasn't allowed outside. And then it was like, executive produced by Drake. I was like,
what?
Actually, yeah. Drake and Future. Well, definitely Drake, maybe not Future.
Okay.
But yeah, that's why that movie was bad. Anyway, you lose some of that with it feels... a tech person will probably be able to explain it better, but there's something about with the modern phones and stuff, I just don't think it translates as well. I know there's one
It's
example.
too clean. Like, you know,
yeah.
like everything looks too nice.
There is one example of a horror that I think is decent, but I haven't seen it, where they're all in like a group chat or something, and that's how the murder, and that's kind of...
Unfriended, is it?
Maybe.
They're actually pretty good. Like,
yeah, I think it's that one where
Yeah.
like they maybe pulled it off there. I haven't seen it, so I don't really know.
There's two of those movies. They're actually decent. Like I kind of wish we get more of those. That's that kind of screen life gimmick where it looks like you're watching on a laptop screen. Those films, weirdly enough, are actually better watched on a laptop screen as opposed to the big
Yeah.
screen. But the Blair Witch thing, I mean, like, you know, even like one of the three lead actors, I think it was Joshua Leonard. Like he, well, I think one of the reasons why he was cast is because he could work a camera. And they were like, well, we need you to haul this fucking giant camera around. So, and like, yeah, listen, like, does it look terrible? Sure. But of course it does. It was filmed on rudimentary, you know, equipment back in 99 by people who weren't professionals. They were actors who answered an audition. And the way as well, for anyone who doesn't know about the making of, I mean, like the way it was, there wasn't so much, there was a basic script, like kind of like, here are your bullet points. You know, we're going to go here today.
Yeah, I didn't realise there's a lot of improv in this, which
Tons
it
of
makes
it,
sense
yeah.
when you read it after, but
Yeah, so like basically like you'd have a situation where like they knew that the directors would do things, that they would like, you know, elevate the experience or something, or like leave them, the directors would like leave notes for them to be like, you know, okay, today Josh, your character is like mad at Heather, you know, you're paranoid about something, off you go. Or they would also do stuff like, for example, like they would go to bed in their tents and then the directors would leave piles of rocks outside their strategically arrange piles of rocks outside the tents. And that would freak them out, and that's in the movie, and the stick figures and stuff, and like they would like be outside like shaking the tents and screaming, and like legend has it that when Heather runs out and she's running off and something's after them, that she didn't know what that was, and that's genuine terror that she's experiencing. And how do you make a pile of rocks scary? How do you make a fucking stick bundle scary? But this thing actually does. And then you get the house at the end with the handprints on the wall, and the last bit of the movie with the guy in the corner, and the camera just drops. And
Awful.
It's genuinely like if it's 2 a.m. now and I'm fucking late 30s over here, if I think about the Blair Witch Project or the original Ring film and it's 2 a.m, then I have to look at my phone or something. I can't. My brain just is too freaked out by it. The weight of these films has genuinely kind of persisted. And you mentioned earlier on parodies. Yeah, this film was ripe for parody, and it sucks as well because if you look at the lead actor of the three, Heather Donahue, she did the talk show circuit. We have a clip.
And then when they shot it, it was a weird way of shooting it.
It was an incredibly weird way of shooting it.
Because you were seriously screaming and crying.
Yeah.
This was not acting.
No. Well, here's the deal. What do you think acting is, Craig?
Well,
this is an important question that comes up a lot as regards this movie. And I have
But sometimes you were not. Sometimes they will think of something from their childhood that would make them scream or cry. You were actually experiencing something that was freaking you out.
Well, like any time that you have a nice, well put together fictional circumstance, it makes it easier for you to believe in.
Right.
But however, if I woke up one morning and there was a pile of rocks outside my door, I wouldn't really be crying about it.
Right.
You do have to sort of
So they just
give it that little extra push.
Right. They did not tell you what they were going to do.
No, we always knew they were going to do something. We just never knew exactly what that thing was going to be.
Wow.
It was crazy.
So she was looking for more work and wanted to be a movie star, as they all did. But because there was that weird disconnect that people thought that she was really dead, no one really took it seriously, and she didn't. She did some stuff, but nothing major. Joshua Leonard has had a bit more of a career. He's actually married to Alison Pill, who people might know from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and The Newsroom, the best show of all time. And then the other guy, I think, just dropped it and became a teacher or something. But it didn't take off for them, and they were chewed up by the machine. And Heather Donahue in particular got the worst of it. And why? Because she was the poster girl, because she is the big scene where she cries down the lens, and because, let's be fair, she's the woman out of the group. They just picked her because it was for a time it was, this is the greatest thing of all time, and then it was, fuck Blair Witch, we're sick of this. Let's have fun with it. Let's mock it. And if you look at the years since, Heather Donahue has gotten into cannabis growing, and she has left the industry. Yeah, good for her. She's left the entertainment industry completely. She's changed her name. I think she might have practiced Wicca for a while. And she's given interviews about the experience and how it really kind of fucked her up, and how she was treated poorly by the Hollywood machine. And there was even something as recent as this year, / last year, when Cate Blanchett's film Tar came out, which is a fantastic film. Have you seen it?
I still haven't seen it.
It's great. I think you'll love it. But there's a moment in
I have
this...
a long plane journey coming up, so I'm probably going to watch it then, I think.
I think it'd be good for a plane. There's a moment in the movie, and shame on me for not picking this out at the time, and kudos to our friend Michael Pope, formerly of The Galaxy, who did notice this at the time. There's a moment in Tar when Cate Blanchett goes for a run in a park, and she's in Berlin, and it's this beautiful low lighting, and she hears a woman screaming in the distance, and there's sirens going off and stuff, and there's this woman screaming over and over again, and she kind of stops, and she's looking around, she's freaked out by it, and it sounds like this woman is in great distress. It's the audio of Heather from the Blair Witch Project.
Oh my God.
I know. And someone put it up on YouTube being this is the fucking audio from Blair Witch Project, and Heather Donahue replied to it and basically said, thank you for doing this and for keeping this thing alive. And, unfortunately for me, it wasn't a great experience, but, I really do appreciate that there's people out there who, this is a big deal for them.
Yeah.
And it's nice, blah, blah, blah. So just a weird, there you go. Its legacy continues, to this day. But it was such a weird experience for, and even the directors went on to make a couple of horror movies, nothing major.
Nothing of note, though. That's Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez.
Yeah, nothing huge there. I think they've all been kept busy, but this was the phenomenon. And the weird thing is that it kind of cannibalized itself. And of course, what did Hollywood want to do? They wanted a sequel.
Sequel, baby. And the next year. Just straight in, no kissing. We are not waiting around. We need to capitalise on this right now.
And it involves none of the original cast. And the trailer, if I may, sounds a bit like this.
Last summer, after the crowds left, 5 strangers returned to the woods to uncover the truth. But one of them has a secret that will unlock the curse.
You know, if you don't believe in the Blair Witch, then why the hell did you bother to come?
I thought the movie was cool.
This fall, just in time for Halloween, the witch is back. On October 27th, forget everything you've heard. Forget everything you've seen. Because this time, the truth is scarier than fiction.
A brutal murder in the Black Hills discovered today. In the past year, the Black Hills area has been overrun with movie fans wanting to get a glimpse of where the Blair Witch Project was filmed.
So, that is the trailer for Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
Have you ever heard anything more 2000s in your life?
It came out on October 27, 2000. So, yeah, pretty much just a year or so after the first one, which, you know, would hint at maybe what you might call a rush production. And it was. Do you know who directed this?
I have it here, but I'm not hugely familiar with what he does. So it's Joe Berlinger?
Joe Berlinger. He is a mostly documentarian, but he has made a couple of feature films, including this one. As a matter of fact, he made the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie.
I was about to say extremely loud and incredibly close.
Extremely wicked,
shockingly evil and vile. Yeah. I haven't seen that either, I'm going to be honest. Well, I wasn't really interested.
Well, he made that 19 years after he made this. In between this, he's made a bunch of documentaries. I mean, he made like the Paradise Lost movies about the West Memphis Three, which were quite influential where their case was concerned. And also, you know, anyone who listens to No Encore will be very happy that I get to say this out loud. He's the co-director. Yeah, shout out, by the way, to the No Encore Music Podcast, which I host, which Fanilla's on.
You plug at the end. Get on with it, Hanratty.
He co-directed Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, the greatest documentary of all time.
I can't believe we're still talking about it.
He directed it.
There you go. It always comes back around, full circle.
Kind of a gun for hire in this situation because, again, this was a studio trying to just cash in. And in fairness, of course, like that makes perfect sense. This thing made so much fucking money the first time around. We got to do it again. But there was there was competing scripts and there was all kinds of studio interference. And as you would have inferred there from the trailer, and can we just talk about the sadly missed trailer voice man?
Yeah. R.I.P.
What a job that'd be. I think he is literally dead, but it's certainly...
trailers are so bad now. You get a mini trailer at the start for some reason, and then the rest of the trailer. Bring back a man just saying things.
Like, I love that, you know, forget everything you know. And just like, you know...
It's so good.
1 year later. It's all that kind of stuff. But you can tell it straight away. Like immediately you're like, wait a minute, that's not what we should be doing.
They're setting up an entirely different movie.
Completely.
Yeah.
You've killed everything about the first film that made it good. That made it great. And in fairness, like, you know, as you heard someone say in the trailer there, they were like, I was a fan of, why you here? I was a fan of the movie. So this is a movie in which the Blair Witch Project exists as a piece of media. That's not the worst idea of all time. You know, this is all about, you know, fans who come to the town and ruin the locals and annoyed them, like ruin their lives and annoyed them, and conspiracy theories about Blair Witch being real. And like that really happened, as we said. People literally thought it was real. And some people, like, you know, like this is almost the birth of true crime podcasts in a way back then for the time. But it doesn't quite translate, and because the studio forced the director to hack it apart bit by bit and reassemble it in different ways, the finished narrative doesn't even really make any sense. Like it.
So this is very hard to find online.
Impossible to find online. Even your notable,
like where you would usually be able to get things that you can't find. Yeah. You can't get it there either.
No.
You were able to get me a link, but as you did flag as well, the stream freezes every 30 seconds, probably less.
The film is 90 minutes long. I think it took me 3 hours to watch it recently when I went back to watch it.
And full disclosure, I was unable to finish it, but what I did see, wasn't a huge fan, found it very hard to follow it from a narrative perspective. I thought the performances were tonally very strange. I don't think it knew what it wanted to be, but I do think there is a premise there, but they just didn't get there at all with whatever they were trying to do.
No, and like the director, Joe Berlinger, like he tried, you know, like there's a quote here where he says, "I thought a more interesting way of connecting Blair Witch 2 to the documentary tradition would be to try and make a movie that tells a story like a good documentary does, infused with social commentary, because that's what a documentary is. It's not about shaking the camera, and it's about telling a story that has social commentary embedded within it." And like the idea again of like, let's look at the media phenomenon that this film caused and how people reacted to it. There's something in there. Maybe just make a documentary instead of making this, because the studio wanted a horror movie, and it's flat. It doesn't look good. It's filmed with conventional techniques. It's not following the same formula as the first one. You have a bunch of broadly drawn characters. You know, there's the mental patient, there's the goth girl, there's the Wiccan, there's the couple, one of whom is a skeptic, one of whom is more of a believer. They're all deliberate archetypes, and they all find themselves together on this kind of Blair Witch hunt. And of course, wouldn't you know it, supernatural things occur, and they turn on each other, and it's a big murder mystery, but it's so far removed from the original. There's almost no DNA whatsoever.
Yeah, like, okay, what is the plot then?
Well, it is that. It is like you got these 5 characters who come together to one of them runs a Blair Witch tour, which would have been real, because like, you know, you have like, there wouldn't be people being like grifting for money, being like, I'll take you out to where the film was shot, or where Heather went missing or something. And, you know, people coming from around the world, like there's actually a moment where like the main guy in this runs into like a competing tour, and they have people with them from like Japan and Germany who've come all this way to see the Blair Witch, or to try and find the Blair Witch. So that's the plot. The plot is that these 5 people kind of come together and hang out in the woods. Overnight, some weird shit starts to happen. And it turns out that they conducted, spoilers for this movie that you can't find online, they conducted a big murder spree together, and when they see all the footage back, it's like them killing people, and they're like, no, I didn't do that, and it's the witch, I suppose. You don't see the witch either. There's a moment where you see kind of like this kind of ghostly girl. People thought it was the Blair Witch. It's not. It's not frightening. Like,
no. I did watch, I did not find scary.
It's just really boring. Like,
whatsoever. Even there's one particular scene where it's the witch and your man who's in the couple, and they kind of, it seemed like they're going to start having sex, and she like rips his flesh and stuff, and then suddenly they're back in the world. It's just very...
That's like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of stuff. But like, it can't decide what it wants to be. This is the problem.
Yeah.
It has none of the power or the weight of the original movie at all. It's just, you know, it doesn't look great, but it's better shot than the original. Like you know you're watching a movie. And even like, you know, to give you an example of it, the production, the way it was kind of stymied, the opening kind of crawl, the opening kind of credits is like, you know, like a drone shotgun over a forest or whatever. And the director wanted the song to be Witchcraft by Frank Sinatra. This kind of playful, you know, little kind of tongue-in-cheek, we're going to have a wry look at this type thing. But the studio was like, nope, not edgy enough.
It's like death metal or something.
It's Marilyn Manson.
Oh no.
It's Disposable Teens by Marilyn Manson.
Oh, no.
And it's like, or the fight song. I should know this because I used to be obsessed with Marilyn Manson, but it's just like Blair Witch 2 bucket. It's just like, and that's what this movie is.
It's so on the nose, yeah.
Yeah, completely. And like, it's not a fun time. It's not a fun hang. Like, and there's nothing to it. It's very like, you know, even having that lore, and like, we all wanted more of this. We all wanted so much more. And like, this movie made some money, you know, and it cost $15 million. And again, you're like, the first movie cost under $100,000. Why does this cost $15 million? What's the point? It made a little bit under $50 million. Like, it didn't do terrible.
It cost $15 million, and it looks like a TV show, and I don't say that disparagingly, but it looks like a really long episode of Buffy or something.
No,
and again, don't mean that as shaded to Buffy, but it's like, this is supposed to be a feature film. You know what I mean?
That is perfectly spot on. It looks like TV, and it looks like, you know, 2000 era TV.
Yeah.
You know, some people, there are truthers out there, you know, who are like, actually, it's a very intelligent horror film with cutting social commentary about our own, you know.
We don't need to retroactively look at everything. And I know that, again, this is the entire premise of this podcast, but you know what? I'm a hypocrite.
No, we all are. But when I went back to watch it and I suffered through that stream, I very much was like, well, I'm going in with that mindset. You know, I want to see, you know, the clever little touches. I want to see the commentary that has actually birthed stan culture that didn't exist then, but that's what this is. This is like, these people are obsessed and they're looking in the wrong places and they don't understand, and, you know, blah, 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 and maybe like it's clever and there's some foreshadowing. No, it's just really boring and flat, and it doesn't work. And again, it robs the original of its power. Now, I'm not someone who thinks that, you know, if we get a terrible sequel to a movie that it destroys the first film retroactively.
No, absolutely not. No.
The thing stands on its own.
Yeah.
But it's just such a horrible, like, weird companion piece that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it kind of killed it, because I mean, there was all these plans. There was plans to do a television show. There was a couple of like video games, like on the PC or something, and like there was book tie-ins and whatever. Like, when the first movie came out, like it was a marketing minefield. Like there was just, you could get everything, you know, like it really was such a big deal. And this just killed the fun, you know, like nobody enjoyed this movie. Nobody was like, oh no, like, I mean, when do we get the third one? As it turns out, we don't get the third one for quite a while. We'll get to that in just a second. But like, yeah, there's just nothing to it. I mean, like, it's just so weirdly empty. And again,
Joyless.
It is joyless, yeah. And it is that thing as well where it's like, at least make it scary. At least make it frightening.
Yeah.
And it just isn't.
Yeah.
Like there's no punch to it whatsoever.
No.
And you can just see them kind of like, but again, I'm kind of reticent to punch down too hard on it because the director had a plan and had a vision, and it got totally fucked over by the studio, who were like, this needs to be here, this needs to be there. They changed like character arcs, they changed how it begins, how it ends.
They're entirely like different sequences put in than what was originally envisioned, which I can imagine is very difficult and very frustrating. Like, how can you stand over a work like that and be like, this is what I wanted when it's fundamentally
it's
not.
incoherent. I mean, like there's talk of, release the Berlinger cut or whatever, but like that's not going to happen because, and look, I mean, it's just one of those things where like what I would say, I think its legacy is the fact that at the time, the people were still kind of hot for this. They were like, we want another one of these. And it's your classic case of a studio being like, that thing was such a massive success, we need to have the next one out immediately. And that can work sometimes. You look at Scream 2 came out a year later, and it's good. Like, I think Scream 2 is a pretty good horror sequel. It's not anywhere near as good as the first movie. But this is the problem when something becomes popular. And it goes back to the thing that you were saying earlier on about, how in the first movie you don't see anything, and that's why it's scary. If you look at, say, the first ever Hellraiser film with, Pinhead on the cover, we all know what he looks like. He's in that movie for approximately 5 minutes, maybe 10. But then you get all these sequels in which he's quipping like Freddy Krueger. But look at Halloween. Like, I think the original Halloween is a masterpiece. I think it's still very frightening. How many Halloween films have we had now, and how many reboots have we had now?
Too many.
And they're just like, but then again, like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if Fanula Jones is running a movie studio and you've got the rights to the Blair Witch Project and it made all that money, you'd be fired
Obviously,
on day two if you weren't like, well, where's my sequel, But
Yeah.
they didn't care enough to make a good movie. They wanted to just make bank. And it made a bit of money, but not enough. And then, I mean, I think, is that studio even around anymore? Like Artisan or whatever it was called?
Not sure.
Yeah, like, I mean, I wonder if Lionsgate bought it, because Lionsgate is where the next movie comes from. But yeah, I mean, before we get to that one though, so yeah, even if you had a struggle to the end, you weren't experiencing anything on the level that you were.
I thought it was so...
Acquired by Lionsgate.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lionsgate bought out the rights eventually.
I just thought it was so... like, the lead fella who's the psych patient who's leading the tour just seemed like he was playing everything for laughs, which was maybe a bit of the character.
It's Jeffrey Donovan, young Jeffrey Donovan.
What else is he in?
He's in Sicario. He's got a small role in there. He's in like a bunch of TV stuff as well. I think Burn Notice, some show I never watched before. He's on Law and Order. Fargo. He was on Fargo, the second season, which was good. He's got one of those faces that you'll see him and you're like, oh yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, and he does, but I don't know, none of it... I felt like none of the characters would have stayed together for that long, even despite the circumstances. And I think the only thing that was keeping them together was the actual events that happened. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like...
They did the weird...
Like, silly, but without the fun. And then I think without the fun, like, we're laughing at you, I'm not laughing with you. And I fundamentally wasn't scared.
They did the weird gimmick, though, of, like, the lead actors use their real first names.
Okay,
but, like, it doesn't amount to anything.
Yeah.
You know? And I should say as well, like, even with all this said, and even with, the kind of the 2000 aesthetic and Marilyn Manson over the opening credits and just the kind of the meta commentary of it all, like, I should have loved this because it's basically like new metal Blair Witch. But it's not. It's just nothing. And it broke my heart, Fanula. It did.
Did you watch it upon release or later
on video, I think, which is kind of curious because I was like, why didn't I go see this I can't recall seeing it in the cinema.
Yeah.
There's every possibility that it just didn't come to the cinema or I thought it looked bad, but I remember watching it on video. And even video had this weird kind of ahead of its time thing that didn't quite work, where it was like, watch the film and look out for these clues. There are 7 clues in this movie that will spell out like a secret or something. And like, at the end of the VHS, it shows you what it is. And it was something like, it was like, here's like a pentagram shape here, and here's this, and these spell out these letters, and like, it's meant to, like, it's called The Secret of S-River, which is the word reverse.
Right.
Reversed backwards.
Okay.
Isn't that clever? And there's some like payoff to it where it's like, don't seek out the Blair Witch, or like the dead children will get you or something.
Okay.
And you're kind of like, oh, well, I mean, like, it doesn't...
I'll take my chances.
Yeah, but also you're just like, well, that's not really anything, but it's a nice... Again, like, it's like, this film is ahead of its time in where, because it has like those Easter eggs and it has like the whole idea of meta commentary about the whole fandom and how fandom is toxic and, years ahead of its time in that regard. And yet, it's a 1-star, atrocious piece of shit.
Yeah.
So let's move to 2016, shall we? It took 16 years.
16.
To get
Not
this.
as bad. Blair Witch. 2016, not as bad.
Yeah, let's hit that trailer.
What is that?
The guy who uploaded this video said it was from a tape he found in the Black Hills woods. I think that might be my sister.
You really think your sister could still be out there after all these years?
If there is any chance that I could find out what happened to her, I need to try.
Legend said there's been a curse on these woods.
Do you believe in the stories about the Blair Witch?
Oh my God.
This looks familiar.
We've been walking in a circle.
No way!
They're everywhere. Who could have done this? You did this!
Oh my God! This way, come on!
There's something out there.
We found it!
That's not your sister. That can't be her.
Come on! Get in the corner! Don't look!
I'm so sorry.
There was hype for this, obviously from, corners of the internet and myself.
Yeah. I just feel like I heard nothing about this.
Which is really interesting because they completely fucked up the marketing for this.
Okay. Which is ironic, seeing as the first one was such a marketing success.
Yeah, and it's like they had a cute idea and then they messed it up. So basically, the writer and director behind this, it really excited me when I found out that they were doing it because, Adam Wingard is the director and Simon Barrett is the writer. They've done a bunch of kind of independent horror stuff, but most prominently, at least certainly for me anyway, they made a film called You're Next, which is very good, and they made a film called The Guest with Dan Stevens, which is one of my favorite films of the last 10 years. It's a really fun, kind of dark 80s throwback action drama, I suppose would be one way of misdescribing it, but it's about Dan Stevens plays this kind of war veteran who comes home to a family and he says, I served with your son, he died, he wanted me to seek you out when I came home and let you know that I'm going to watch over you or something, and there's something off about him, and it's just it goes from there, and it's just very knowing and quite sharp, and Dan Stevens is great in it, and it's just a really, really good fucking movie. And when I found out that these guys were doing a Blair Witch reboot next or whatever, I was like, well, you couldn't pick better people to do it. Turns out I was wrong. But the way this kind of came about was it was shrouded in mystery. Initially, it was announced that Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett were bringing out a horror film called The Woods. And there was a teaser trailer for The Woods, and, there was a poster for The Woods with The Woods written on it. And there was a screening at a Comic-Con, a preview screening ahead of time for the people who were there, and they went to see The Woods, and they're walking through the lobby, and there's posters everywhere and standees and, whatever for The Woods, and they go see this movie, and they realize when they sit down and 5 minutes in or less, they realize, holy shit, we're watching a secret Blair Witch movie. No one knew that this was being filmed. And right now, and in fairness, you probably would be like, oh my God, what an incredible surprise. Then they watch the movie, and when they come back out into the lobby, all the posters for The Woods now say Blair Witch. And so it's that's a good story. Internet was set ablaze, and it was what a, but if you really kind of break that down for a second, you're like, well, you revealed that it's about the Blair Witch in the first minute of the movie. So why go to all the trouble for all the people walking into the movie, to fool them to that level when you give the game away straight away? And as it turns out, the plot of this is almost identical to the 1999 one.
Yeah.
So you have seen this?
Yes.
So this follows a character called James Donahue, who is meant to be the brother of Heather from the first one. He's like this kind of well-meaning paramedic type who enlists his friends, including his friend Lisa, who's making a documentary about the Blair Witch and the hunt for Heather. And essentially, they see a piece of footage that they think is Heather in the house that she disappeared in, and they're going to go out there and try and get her back. But
yeah,
then,
he has like a news alert set up for her on his phone, so it just pings off one day that it's this video attached to the scene. So he's like, okay, I need to investigate.
You see the
this.
figure of a woman like reflected in glass or something or whatever, and he's like, that's her, that's definitely her. And it's like, well, how could it be? And so him and a bunch of friends go out to the woods to try and find the Blair Witch, and they enlist a couple of local weirdos, as they call. And so you got bigger, you got like a bigger amount of people. Classic horror movie sequel thing, bigger body count. And again, like it's mostly like, even the way it's filmed, like they're like, oh, we have drone cameras now and we can do a bit of trickery there, but it's a bit too clean and a bit too polished. But I went in with a big I think this is gonna do it. I think they're finally gonna get it back. It's not, it can't possibly be as good as the first movie. There's just no way. But I think they're gonna honor it, and these guys know what they're doing, and the premise is kind of interesting. It's a direct sequel to the first one. It's bringing back those characters. Maybe we'll see Heather again. And it's just not very good, and it's not scary. And how was your experience of this?
Kind of the same. I did find some parts of it scary. I think some
the ending
parts,
is okay.
Yeah, in the house. But again, I think it's kind of too late. And as you said, you're kind of getting a play by play or like direct copy of the first one. And the first one did it so well that it doesn't matter how many drones or whatever you throw in, it's never going to work the same way. And I suppose I found, like, this is a nitpicky thing, but I found like the camera stuff a bit annoying, that it was like not everyone was shooting at all times, but the camera angles would still be like you'd be getting a certain person's POV as if they were looking at a camera, you know what I mean? They were talking to someone.
Yeah, they have these cameras that are like attached to their heads or something as well.
Which
so.
I get, and maybe if they'd done it another way, it would have taken me out even more, but I just felt even that kind of took me out a small bit. I'm glad that they didn't, because I was really afraid that it was where it was going, that we were going to get a full vision of the witch, or like Heather or whoever, and it seemed like they were really hinting towards that, and I'm glad they inevitably didn't, because I was like, no, I like kind of the scariest bits for me is when there's that figure kind of running around the house when Lisa's gone upstairs to look for your man, whose name I can't remember, but
James is his name.
James is his name, yeah.
You see the like as the film goes on, you see, because again, your anticipation, much like with the second one, is, are we finally going to see the Blair Witch? Are they finally going to show it, and how are they going to do it, and kind of live up to the hype? The answer, of course, is no. But like, there is a moment where like you see this kind of weird like Slender Man-esque giant monster like peer out from a tree for like a split second, and you're like, what was that? And of course, if you go back and you freeze frame it, it looks pretty lame. There's moments where like their tents shoot up into the air, as if pulled up by God himself. And there's just kind of weird body horror here and there. Like they tried with some stuff, but it's not quite there. But yeah, when it gets to the house, and again, like it follows the basic structure beat for beat. They find weird shit. They have rows with each other. One of them goes missing. They find a house, and it's the house. And of course, you have like the whole thing where she's like, that's not your sister. It can't possibly be. And like, that's kind of effective. And you're like, scary house in the middle of the woods, let's do it. And they did a decent job production design wise in the house. There is a moment where the character of Lisa is crawling in this kind of underground cave thing, and it's closing in on her. It's very claustrophobic, and that's kind of tough to watch. And yeah, you get that weird moment where the house basically, it's as if the house comes to life or something, and it's there's a kind of like weird lights coming through the slats in the windows, and there's a thing for like a second, if you look at it, that kind of is lurching down a corridor towards somebody. And again, if you go back and you pause it, it's just this kind of very elongated, monstrous thing, which again, everyone's like, it's the Blair Witch, but then the filmmaker's like, no, actually, it's an agent of the Blair Witch who has been, and I'm like, oh, what are we doing? Like, yeah,
okay, but I hate the over-explanation, but I'm also glad that it's not the Blair Witch, because that's not what the fucking Blair Witch, like,
no.
in my mind anyway, it's not, like...
What does the Blair Witch look like in your mind? How fabulous
fucking
is she?
Woman in white, like, mashed in face,
mashed in face.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think
it's scarier if she looks like normal.
But that's the whole thing. Like that there's a human element to it. Like
beautiful,
that it is just that it is just Heather kind of milling around, and time has not been kind to her. She's ravaged.
That's another aspect that they throw into this, which again, you're like, not a bad idea, guys. Maybe you fleshed it out better, because there's a moment where they have a row with some people who then storm off. Like the locals that they hire reveal that they've been kind of planting stuff to try and just whatever,
to convince them to stay because there is something happening, and they're the ones who had initially found the footage that he got the Google alert for.
And then he's like, they've been lying the whole time. I'm heartbroken. We've been made fools of.
Which, fair, what a stupid fucking plan on their part. Like,
but they're
Jesus
meant to be
Christ.
obsessive fans who just want people to listen to them because they're conspiracy theorists, essentially.
Yeah.
So they get exiled, and then there's a moment where they come back, and when they come back, they're like, we've been walking around the woods for like 2 weeks or something. And they're like, what? No, it's only been like 2 hours. And they're like, no, we've been out here for like days. And I'm like, and it never, like, it's night all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're good ideas, they're not bad ideas.
Yeah, she sets the alarm for 7 a.m. to like wake up and leave when it's bright, and then they wake up and it's not bright at all.
Yeah, like it's not without. It's like, as you say, it's much better than the second one because things actually happen, and there is a sense of danger, and like you're out in the woods again, and blah 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 blah. But it's all a bit too polished and pristine and clean, and you never feel any real sense of danger, and the characters aren't there.
They didn't do enough with the body horror stuff either. I thought that was leading to someone else, and then it's just like, okay, so then she climbs up after the drone and falls out of the tree.
And before that, she pulls like a big like centipede out of her leg or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but like that's it. Like that's Ashley is the character, Corbin Reed is the actor.
Yeah, it's all a bit perfunctory is the problem. I mean, like, and you are like, it is very much like, when am I going to get to the fireworks factory? That being the house. The house stuff is not bad. Like it's fine. It's actually okay. It just about gets you over the line. But it just has the same ending, like, don't turn around, they turn around, and that's the end of the movie. And it's like, okay.
Well, I was glad because I thought they were going to give Lisa some fucking get out of jail free card because she was looking through the viewfinder. And I was like,
that was good.
If she's someone, that is good. But I was like, if she gets away, I'm going to be actively annoyed now because how would that even, do you know what I mean?
I was actively annoyed though because she fell for it. Because like the whole thing is that, she hears your man's voice and we know that he's dead at this point. And she does the James and like turns around and like, that's it. But it's like, and in fairness, listen, let's be fair here. If you or I were in this situation, I mean, I'm probably the first one to die, right? Like, do you think you could, like how would you do if we transported Fionnuala Jones into the Blair Witch horror house? Either the first one or the magically rebuilt new one?
I'd be so loud. You know what I mean?
You'd scare the witch off.
Yeah. No, as in, the witch would know immediately where it would be so easy for the witch, like, or whatever entity.
Yeah. There's no need for her parlour games.
I've knocked something off a nightstand. I'd be like, whoops, sorry, like a cat, like,
Yeah, I mean, like... it's just like, it's the simple stuff. You go back to the first one, it's like, a scary house in the woods. Like, who wants to be in one of those? Like, it's fucking terrifying. That's what works. The haunted house element of this stuff works. Adding more lore, it just doesn't quite work. And like, noble effort, but it just, I remember leaving the cinema being like, well, did I like it? I wrote a review of it. I remember like sending my review in and being like, I think I like this, but I don't know. And my editor was like, well, this reads more like a 2. And I was like, well, I guess it's not great, is it? And I think people felt the same way. Like, I went to see it in Cineworld on, I think, the day it came out. And if I recall correctly, the only people in the cinema were me and a couple having sex a few...
what?
Oh, yeah. A few seats away from me in the back row.
Oh, my God.
Well, I didn't look for, like, penetration or anything, but I mean, at the same time, there was definitely, like...
something was happening.
Oh, yeah. Like, some full-on straddling. And in fairness, I couldn't get mad at them because I was like, yeah, the movie's not really doing it. Like, I mean...
Work away, guys.
I can't really blame you. You're here to have better entertainment there, so fair play. And they weren't, like, kids. Like, these were, like, grown adults. And I'm just like, really? You're going to the Blair Witch, like, remake or reboot on a Friday at 4? Like, go anywhere else,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was the scariest thing that happened to me that day. I was kind of freaked out when I got home because I was like, oh, I'm in this tight house on my own. It's claustrophobic, corridors and stuff.
Especially after that tunnel scene, yeah.
The tunnel scene is pretty fucking, yeah. I mean, but like, it didn't set the box office on fire.
No, like they had like kind of decent predictions for it, and then kind of came out with something more conservative.
Yeah.
But they thought because there'd been a load of other movies that did well that year, especially in the horror genre. You've like Lights Out, Conjuring 2, Purge, Election Year, The Shallows, Don't Breathe. Did not do. I think in the States anyway, it was $9.7 million in its opening weekend, which was below expectation.
It cost $5 million, and I think the total overall that's made to date is like $45 million. And again, we're living in the time where like you need to make at least twice that because of marketing and all that kind of stuff. But I remember as well, like the critics as well, like really punched it apart. They were like, this sucks. Like, they did not like it at all. What does it have on? It has an average rating of 38% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 226 reviews. Now, Rotten Tomatoes is not the be-all and end-all, and in fact, it's a system that you can absolutely game, and it is corrupt if you ask me, and there's been some recent stuff, blah, 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 blah. But
I'll link a good podcast about that explains that in the show notes.
Oh, great. I look forward to hearing it. But it is that thing of like, you know, it's a average benchmark, and you know there is some truth to it, and people trust it as well as the problem. But like, people didn't like this movie, and I remember my big prevailing takeaway from this was I remember seeing Simon Barrett, the writer of the film, on Twitter. He put up a tweet, and I tried to find the exact one, but I'm gonna have to just paraphrase him. But he basically put up a tweet on the Monday after this came out, and he goes, well, our little horror film didn't do too well at the box office this weekend, but at least we got overwhelmingly negative reviews. Like, there you go. That's how you own
That's
it.
a way to laugh at it. And they're going on to do the Godzilla sequel that's coming out at some point.
They did Godzilla vs. Kong. I think they're doing another one of those.
They are, yeah. That is Godzilla Kong, The New Empire.
I haven't seen the other one, but like, yeah, they're fine. They also did like Death Note, which was not very good. Simon Barrett made a horror film called Seance. It's okay. They'll always be in the genre. They'll always work. I felt bad for them because this was a huge swing and a big miss. But I think what it proved though is that the love is gone. I don't think people want more Blair Witch. They didn't turn out for it. Like, and I do think the marketing kind of screwed them, because I think that they had announced it well in advance. We are bringing back Blair Witch. We got these new horror guys on it. Look at their CV. We're gonna do some weird different shit with it. The marketing, the stunt that they pulled at Comic-Con, it's a cute stunt. I think it actually adversely affected it. And then on top of that, when you actually got down to the film and you were like, well, this is just a less good remake. You didn't do enough new stuff with it. And again, you know, for the diehards, it was like, well, it was a moment in time. Like, the first one is such a moment in time. And I'm fascinated by the fact that you found it genuinely frightening in 2022. I think that's great. Like that to me is such a relief to hear, because but then it is that weird thing where it's like you could show it to anybody back then or even now, and it is that thing where one person sees one thing and one person sees another thing. Some people are just like, nothing happened, I was bored. You know, this is the horror film that people have been banging on about for fucking 24 years, whatever it is now. This is nothing. And then you show it to someone else and they're like, I'm not going to sleep for a week. And that's the mark of a great horror film, in a way, is to be divisive, but to have the ability to genuinely freak somebody out. Book of Shadows in 2000 and Blair Witch in 2016. I'm sure there are people out there who fight for these movies, because there's, like, you know, you find any film out there, there's always someone being like, actually, I think, you know, fucking Wall Street 2 is a modern classic. And it's like, okay. But like, I bet there's someone out there who is like, goes to bat for these movies as underappreciated, you know, really good actually movies. But I don't think they scared anybody. Like, I just don't see how you're scared by this.
Yeah.
You know?
Are there any good horror sequels off the top of your head?
In general? In
general, yeah, because it's such a trend. Obviously, well, sequels are a big trend anyway, but they seem to be less successful than, we'll say, with the likes of like comedy, action. Maybe that's a massive generalisation, but I don't know. Paranormal Activity, all the ones after the first, pretty shit. Pretty sure most of the Conjuring sequels, not that they were shit, not as good as the first one. Think I said with the Annabelle series, which is a spin-off of The Conjuring anyway. I think one of the sequels of Annabelle is supposed to be very good. Can't remember which one. I know they're doing a sequel to Smile, which I'm like, that was good. Can we just maybe let that alone?
It made money though. It made a lot of money, didn't it?
Oh no, I know, but
Yeah.
and obviously The Exorcist, I don't know if that's a sequel or just a hard reboot or whatever, but like, they're constantly doing it.
Yeah, the new one's meant to be horrendous, and that's part of it.
Yeah, I've heard very bad or like middling things, and I'm like, you don't want it to be middling.
It's meant to be part of a trilogy as well. It's done by the guys who did the Halloween reboots, which weren't good either. I mean, are there good horror sequels? Yeah, it's hard. Like 28 weeks later, I think it's actually better than 28 days later. I'm that guy. I think it is a better movie. People say Aliens is better than Alien. It's more of an action movie. I disagree. I think the first one's great. I mean,
you said Scream 2 is good.
Scream 2 is good, yeah, but it's
What about the others?
First one is an absolute classic. It's still amazing. 2 is fine. 3 is not great. 4 is better than it was when it came out. I do like the reboots though, like 5 and 6. I think they're a lot of fun. They're playing to formula. You know, like they're not going to really, you know, change your life, but they're a lot of fun. Actually, what I do think is good is I think both the one from this year, directed by an Irish director, and the one from 10 years ago, I think the Evil Dead reboots, remakes, sequels, whatever you want to call them. The 2 that we got in the last 10 years, I think they're really solid. like genuinely good movies that don't, you know, they have enough of a connection to the original without kind of pissing on it, and they're kind of doing their own thing, and they're good for gorehounds, and they're good for just kind of tightly made horrors. Yeah, you can't really go wrong with those. I think the new Evil Dead one is on Netflix now. I could be wrong. But yeah, sequels, it's a weird game. Like, you're always going to find people who are just going to try and cash in for a quick buck, and you just lose the magic. But it's, you know, it's like we talked earlier on. It's like the more you see of the villain, the killer, the whatever, the more you get, the more it doesn't work. But that's this is an entirely us problem, because I want more Blair Witch, I want more Hellraiser, I want more Freddy Krueger, I want more Michael Myers. Then I get it, and I'm like, no, that's too much.
No, actually, too much. Take it back.
That's too much. You showed me too much. Yeah, the scariest thing in horror is generally what is left to your imagination, and that's why the first Blair Witch movie works. And I contemplated rewatching it ahead of this podcast, but I thought, you know what? No, I did it a couple of years ago, and it freaked me out just as much. And I remember I was sitting in my room in the house on my own during the pandemic, I think it was as well. So you're extra kind of like, you know, boxed in, and I had my in-ear earphones in.
You're a glutton for punishment.
So my in-ear earphones in, curtains closed, pitch black, no one else in the house. And I looked over my shoulder about 8 or 9 times. I'm a grown man.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
So there you go. Blair Witch, yeah, it's still great. Don't bother with the sequels unless you're a completionist. But if you've never seen the Blair Witch Project, seek it out, even if just so you can disagree with us, you know?
Absolutely. There is another one in development, apparently.
Film.
April 2022, Lionsgate announced a new film as a reboot of the series to be in development. So watch this space.
I mean, I'm there day one. Like, this is the problem, you know?
You'll be there.
Like, yeah, and like if they're like, how would you do it?
But that was a question I was going to put to you. Honestly, I don't really know. Especially having just watched the most recent one. I'm like, how do you do it for this age?
I was going to say don't cast name actors, but they never really have done that, even when they did.
No, to be honest, even with this most recent reboot, none of them are... Well, sorry, they're all working actors. I'm so mean when I talk about
the only
these
one
things.
I know from like the most recent one is like Callie Hernandez, who was in Alien Covenant, and like that Nicholas Winding Refn Amazon show that nobody watched, which is actually quite
Valerie
good.
Curry, who plays Talia in it, she's in The Boys at the minute.
Oh,
but
is
she's
she? She was in The Following, which was that terrible...
she was in
Kevin Bacon show?
Detroit Become Human. Oh my God.
Oh yeah,
that
she
game.
is. Yeah.
Yes.
Her likeness is in that game. I don't know how you do it, because it's tainted by the very fact that you go back to the well, you know, like, I mean, you just can't. The first one was such a moment in time and in pop culture and in horror. It stands alone. It's even like, you know, you look at Ring, like, you know, the Japanese Ring, or even the American remake. The American remake is decent, but like, the more you get of those, it's like, well, you know, like, it's so self-contained. It's never like it's like you know, a joke is never as funny the second time you hear it. Like, a great horror film is never as scary. Well, I'm contradicting myself now, because I do think Blair Witch still has the ability to freak me out, but it was just it's a standalone thing. It had the power, it had the magic, and you know, like, I don't know about you, but like, you throw on a movie and you know in 10 minutes if you're gonna like the movie or not. Sometimes because you're just the way it's filmed, or the actors, or some of the tone. Most modern horrors, I think, don't have that, and also as well. If we do go back to a Blair Witch thing, for the love of God, can we please not make it about trauma? This fucking endless trend of every horror film since The Babadook being actually about trauma and about grief. Like, I've had enough of it. It's like, fine, admirable, and horror has always been an allegory for something else. That's fine. But my God, this run of every quote unquote elevate horror film actually secretly being about grief. I'm like, how are we, like, no wonder this generation's fucked, you know? That's, yeah, the Blair Witch, if she'd be wagging her finger at this current generation, if you ask me. But no, they should do a TV show. Do a 10-episode Netflix show.
Yeah, but I think of a prequel story.
No.
Because you're not treading entirely new ground then. I think the issue with the Blair, like, not the second one, because that, how can you consider that canon in some ways?
You can divorce that completely. Yeah,
but like, you get to the house, Scary Mary, and she's there. We know there's something there. You know what I mean? I just think... But
I don't need, like, this is like, you know, like, I don't need to see the scenes where a witch was ostracized by the town, and, you know, it's like, we know what happened.
Fair.
I find prequels to be a bit kind of like, come on, we know the backstory. But like, in fairness, like, if you do a TV show, yeah, fine, you probably have to have 2 episodes about that or something. But I just don't know. I mean, I don't think you can, like, just make it scary. Hire horror directors who know how to make it scary, and not just cheap jump scares. Like get atmosphere, spend money, practical effects. Don't do cheap gimmicks. Hire good actors. work your ass off on the script, keep it tight, don't make it too long, don't make it a fucking 2-hour movie. It's doomed to fail.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what happens, it's doomed to fail, but no matter what happens, they will get my money. So that's the last thing I have to say about it. And also, I still genuinely freak myself out by thinking about the Blair Witch at night. It
Same.
just, it really is. It's just like, it's 2 words in your head and I can't get back to sleep.
Yeah, and none of us will sleep tonight, I think. Dave, thank you so much. Where can people find you and listen to you should they want to do so?
I host a music podcast called No Encore. It comes out on Fridays. We do a top 5 theme often. Fionnuala has been a guest on before. She will be a guest on again, I desperately hope. I'm on Instagram at Hanratty Dave. I'm on Twitter as well, or whatever it's called now, but I don't really use it anywhere near as much because it sucks. But yeah, get me on Instagram and or listen to No Encore, which is also an Instagram at No Encore Show.
I'll leave all the links below. Dave, until next time, thank you so much for joining me on Flap Culture.
Yep, let's hope we don't get cursed overnight and perish horribly. Thank you.
Stop, Dave.
That pentagram on that door, I'm telling you, like, what is that?
You're jinxing it now.
Okay, thank you for knowing. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much to Dave once again for joining me. I will leave all of his links in the show notes should you want to go listen to No Encore or check out any more of his stuff. Finally, top of the flops, and you should know who it is.
You're a flop.
Top of the flops this week, Justin Timberlake. Oh my God. Now the NSYNC reunion is looking more transparent, perhaps. Britney Spears' memoir, The Woman in Me, came out this week. Lots of bombshells. We were talking about some of them that had been leaked in last week's episode. At the start of the episode, we've learned much more now with the full book being out. Justin does not come out well on this at all, for so many reasons. Britney describes a moment in which Justin used a black scent around black artists. NSYNC was what people back then called soul pimp. They were white boys, but they loved hip-hop. NSYNC hung out with black artists. Sometimes I thought they tried too hard to fit in. And she gives an example of Justin doing this, he sees a guy on the street and he's wearing this medallion and it's very bejeweled and bedazzled and all that. And he gets all excited and says so loud, "Oh yeah, faux shiz, genuine, beyond." So flop behaviour for making Oscar award winner and Emmy award winner Michelle Williams, because she's doing the audiobook, flop behaviour for making her read that, okay? Justin, get a life. Get a life! I talked last week about Spears sharing her experience of getting an abortion during their relationship, something which Justin was for, she was less so. Obviously, because of how prominent they were as a couple at the time, they ended up not seeking specified treatment for it. And she documents the pain that she suffered during the abortion. So while she was writhing in pain on the bathroom floor, JT's like, great idea, it's time for Wonderwall. I'm going to sit there, play music. Absolutely not. No guitar strumming in the world. I mean, no, We also learned that he dumped her via text. Was he the first man? Was he the original Joe Jonas? Is he the originator of the breakup text? Who knows? At this point, he was working on Justified, his debut solo album, and was going very standoffish. She was on the set for the video of Overprotected, the Dark Child remix, and she says, ultimately, he ended our relationship by text message. She'd go out the back and dance after receiving the message in between takes. Devastating. I mean, I know there'll be an argument that when the Framing Britney Spears documentary came out, that he did apologise, and he apologised to Janet Jackson. And I mean, yes, again, if you're very much taking it at face value and coming from a point of forgiveness, I'm sure that apology will be enough for people. I've read other arguments and seen other arguments that it seems bizarre that he would lump the two women in together and each of them deserved something more specific in terms of obviously what they went through. I mean, it's just crazy how he was able to, I don't know, capitalise on her fame throughout his career and capitalise on the experience throughout his career. I think there should also be consideration around the timing of the apology in the wake of the documentary, like why it took that long, why it was only prompted from backlash to the documentary. You know what I mean? Even now I'm reading reports, and again, obviously pinch of salt because it's all sources, and it's not directly from the person's mouth, but I'm reading reports that it's, you know, Justin's not happy with the book. He's worried about being cancelled, in inverted commas. I mean, surely that's not the position you should be taking when someone is coming from a position of sharing the hurt that they experienced and sharing her experience. And to be honest, from what I've read and listened to of the book, she gives a lot of grace to people who I'm not sure deserve it. Obviously, particularly her father. Oh my God, top the flops. Jail for Jamie Spears. Beyond, like, one of the worst people alive. She gives grace to Justin and I think acknowledges her own wrongdoings. So, I mean, from his perspective, surely it's just like, take the L, accept what happened, move on, accept that people are going to feel a way about you now. I make this point extremely badly, right? I think in terms of being a good apology and actually wanting to right wrongs and stuff, I just think there needs to be an acceptance that this was Britney's experience and Justin has been allowed to speak about it through the press, through his music for a very, very, very long time. Britney was unable to because of all the reasons that she talks about in the book. And I think if it's something you were like truly sorry about, your concern wouldn't lie with how you're being perceived, the future of your career. It would just be not that, because you're centering yourself when the person who you've objectively harmed and is describing their experience and their, you know, everything they're struggling with. The concern should ultimately still lie there and the apology, and then I suppose that's what would make it truer as opposed to automatically falling back on what about me-isms, you know? That's all. Kind of flat behaviour to bring back NSYNC in a hopes to mask this, I think. Who knows what the hell they're going to be doing now. Maybe the plan genuinely really was always, we're going to do one troll song and then we're going to peace out. We'll make a few more bob. We'll get money to appear at the VMAs, whatever, I don't know. Maybe there's no grander, wider plan. If there is, I would imagine. That's down the Swanee now, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. Anyway, that is all from me this week. Thank you so much for listening. We are back next week. We're covering a reboot that was not exactly a slam dunk. This has been Flop Culture. Our fearless editor is Adam Shanahan. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.